This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeff Gardner.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, Bev Morgan of Fresh Look Painting Services. Bev, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We love it when we just love any guests coming on the show. It's always a privilege, but especially when they're nominated by a previous guest, Stacy at Simply Design. That's a direct recommendation from her. We love her, so I know we're going to enjoy this conversation with you, Bev. So why don't we get right into it? What is it that you do?
Well, we're a residential and commercial painting business. Simcoe County and surrounding areas, we go south to Innisfil, over to Alliston, Angus, up to Midland. So in that whole geographical area. And then in the summertime, we like to go to the Muskokas as well. I have 4 very experienced painters who have a total of 100 years service in the painting industry amongst them. And we have won the 3 best rated award, the House Best Painting and the Consumer Award year over year. So we're well respected in the industry, and that's what we love to do.
I love it. How long have you been in business for, Bev?
15 years.
All in this, is there a brick and mortar location?
No, we work in other people's houses, so we're never home.
Right. But Simcoe County is where you've always been this 15 years.
Yes.
And is there a preference to commercial or residential?
Not at all. Commercial properties are people's homes away from home.
Sure.
They actually often see their office more than they see their home. So
very true.
It's just as rewarding to freshen that up for them at work as it is at home.
It's wonderful. Anything that you won't do? We work with a number of painters. I mean, our clientele is high ticket service items typically, because they're going to very affluent communities like Midhurst, Springwater, Horseshoe Valley, Ardagh Bluffs, Midland, Tiny. So typically high-end service businesses like yourself. And some of our painters have preferences. Some of them, they call themselves repaint residential indoor painters. I don't know exactly the terminology, but some of them will do some things and not others. So is there anything in a house that you won't paint? I think is an easier question than what you will.
No. And for a lot of time I was in business, I was trying to do everything. I was doing new construction, residential buildings, large exteriors, but we found our lane. We love to work with a homeowner and put the perfect paint on their walls for them, freshen it up, make their house that they've lived in for 12 years now feel new again, or someone who's just moving into a house and they see all the dings and scratches after the other guy moved out and how dirty it looks. We love to do that, and it's very rewarding for us to see how client reacts when they see the finished product. So that's our forte. Same with commercial properties. We do wallpapering, we stain. I have a stain expert on my team. We paint railings. Sometimes people get tired of that look of that oak, so we paint that, whatever color goes with the rest of their home. We paint kitchen cabinets. We don't do very many exteriors. The weather in Ontario gets in the way of scheduling of that. So we only book a few of those. But other than that, we do pretty much anything in a house.
Wonderful. And just from my own knowledge, because you know way more about this than I do, when you say staining, are we talking floors or are we talking the wooden railing that I have in my house?
We're talking stairs.
Stairs. Okay.
And railings. Mm-hmm. And cabinetry.
Okay.
So, and when you refinish those, sometimes you can restain them and get good quality. It depends on what it's like right now. But typically we paint kitchen cabinets, but we can stain them as well. The reason we stain stairs typically is because someone's put in a brand new set of stairs and it's raw wood, which is the ideal time to stain it.
And the stain, is that the final finish, or do you ever paint over staining?
You wouldn't stain and then paint, maybe years later.
Okay.
It also gets several coats or multiple coats of varnish to seal in the stain, but the staining is what gives you the right color that you want.
Okay. Wonderful. I love that you guys have been doing this for 15 years. Not a lot of businesses can say that. Staying power says a lot. And the awards, congrats on the awards. So we love learning about businesses and their services locally so we can help our local communities, but we really pride ourselves on, it's a privilege in this show. It's kind of a pleasure of ours to learn about the story, learn about more of the human. We've found that after hundreds and hundreds of episodes, that there's usually a very interesting story. Humans typically don't just do things. There's an intention there. I haven't found too many entrepreneurs just like trip and fall into a successful business. It takes a lot of work, a lot of intention, a lot of direction. So we love to know why. So what brought you to maybe even entrepreneur? You own your own business. That's a hard thing to do. And you've been doing it for 15 years. So what brought you to the painting world? What brought you to opening up your own business, Bev?
So my corporate career was in telecommunications for many years. I'm not going to tell you how many, it was a lot. I trained and managed customer service reps in the telecommunication industry before there was Bionic Betty. Okay. So real hands-on, phone in the ear, talking to clients and solving their problems or answering their questions. So I taught that and I managed that. So my focus has always been customer service. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to where my husband, who was also in the telecommunications industry, took an early retirement so he didn't have to commute to Toronto anymore and started his own business that would allow us to travel, which we've always traveled a lot. Mm-hmm. And around that time, I got laid off from my last corporate job, moved to Toronto. That company moved to Toronto. And I was then looking for what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And I didn't want to get another job where I was going to start with 2 weeks holidays. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what can I do? My mom and my husband are nomads, and I have moved 25 times in my life.
Wow.
So every time you move, you paint.
Yes, you do.
I got good at it. I love it. I love choosing the colors and painting it, get nice, fresh when you move in somewhere. And so I thought, I'll just paint. I'm going to start a painting business. And that way I can go on holidays whenever I like and still make some money. So I did that. As naive as that was, it was successful because I'm pretty self-confident and I just went around and did it. At the time when I went into business, I was on the board of hospice. I was in a BNI group. I was in Rotary. I knew a lot of people. And so all my friends would get me to paint. And within a couple of weeks, I had to hire my sister to work with me. And then not long after that, I started having to hire people because we were really, really busy. Mm-hmm. So now that that's how I got started. That's why I'm in the painting business. And I still love it. And we still travel a lot.
That's what I was about to ask. So I started really, for the most part, 2 businesses. Fitness is a huge part of my life. Been a personal trainer for about 20 years now, 37. Yeah. So started when I was 18. And I ran my own show there, and that developed into something which was great. And that got me on the path to entrepreneurship. But certainly in marketing, what I do now for nearly a decade, and in fitness as well, I always thought, and this is connected to the question I'm about to ask you about your travel, if I hire somebody, I can get them to take that off of my plate. They can remove some of the workload from me, which to a sense was true. But I also thought that would give me more time back. If I'm working 60 hours a week and I hire somebody, maybe I can work 50 and they can do 10. It never worked out that way for me. It always stayed at 60 or 70. and I just went from one person to 20. So since you started this business, because you said you didn't want only 2 weeks vacation, I shouldn't say I wish, it's under my control. I haven't allowed myself to take 2 weeks of vacation for many, many years in a single year. For whatever reasons, I guess I always tell myself there's something to do, but you made that a priority to make sure, even when you're running and growing this business, which did you say there's 4 crews now?
4 people now. At one point I had 7, but it's a lot to manage to have 7 people working in multiple locations. And I was working crazy hours, and I never got 7 great painters. So the reason that I can travel is I have mature, longtime painters who are very capable of running their own business, but they don't want to. They just want to go to work and be, served up the work.
Yep.
But they love working for me. So they are willing to take things over for a period of time while I go away, as long as I'm coming back. So it's kind of the dream. It was my dream when I started the business that I could do that, never really thinking that it would be possible to get people that I could trust to act as me. And there's no doubt about it that I have those people. So that's the key, is the right people in place.
And I think that, I'm pretty darn confident with it, that is a compliment to your leadership. I mean, no matter how great the business is, if whoever we are working for, we don't resonate with, we don't connect with them, there's no trust there, you probably wouldn't be feeling the way you do. I imagine you have great people too, great leader, great people. It's a wonderful thing, but it is rare. There's not every entrepreneur is saying what you're saying. So
in my corporate world and in this business, I feel that fun and productivity go hand in hand. They don't fight each other. And so I encourage that. And the people that I have love working with each other. Sometimes clients think they're married because of the way they carry on. But it's getting that perfect team, and then I can relax. I just got back from 6 weeks away.
Is this the only vacation time for you this year? Or are we adding more to that 6 weeks? Yeah, that's a good answer. So
last year I had 3 months.
And that's one of the dreams for entrepreneurship. I mean, I believe I was reading a stat. It was something like for every 110 employees, there's one entrepreneur in Canada, something like that.
Is that all?
Are you saying there should be there? You think there's more entrepreneurs than that or less?
Yeah, I think it was 100 just to kind of hang around with entrepreneurs. I think they're everywhere. Right?
I think it was 100 to 1, something around that. It's a lot of employees, and a lot of the people on my team, we talk about that stuff, and it's a fear. It's that uncertainty. It's that self-doubt. Some people are just decide they want to build something great, but I will say that what you are able to do, that 3 months vacation, that's really, I think, maybe not for all of us, but for many, certainly for me, that's the dream right there, to be able to build something great, know that you're helping your community, you're being profitable, you're providing opportunities to great staff, and you're able to go explore the world or whatever it is that you like to do. You get some time to yourself rather than just working endlessly. So nice work, considering this was like, I got laid off and I had to figure out something to do. Well, you certainly picked well, Beth.
Yeah. And I got to say, at the beginning, when I was building it, it was my husband who kept saying, "We're going, get in the car."
Right.
And so I get that it's hard to pull away.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
it was a priority for you.
The one that pushed it.
Right. And you guys have kept that since you started, all 15 years.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And how long, the 4 that are with you right now, have they been with you for years?
More than 7 years each.
Wow.
Yeah. So those ones, the ones that I've kept, are critical. Yeah.
I love that I think this is verbatim, but you said fun and productivity. I think you used the word productivity. It's just something that's not talked about as much. I mean, I love reading. I love learning in general, but reading is probably the main form. And there is a book called Fun Productivity or Feel Good Productivity right behind me. And he talks about that he's a very, very successful person, but he was an MD. He was a doctor at a hospital. The stress was, as you can imagine, overwhelming. Yeah. He had a young wife and he had a 1-year-old. And he said, that was it. I'm 33 years old and I feel like I'm 70. I'm being burnt out. There was no fun. The stress was incredible. And so now he's dedicated his life to running his IT business, but teaching people that fun can be a part of business. Not only can it be, but it is the answer to a lot of our struggles. If you can make learning and work fun, I think you've got the key. I think you've got the secret sauce. So I love that you brought that up. Not too many of our guests talk about how fun work can be and maybe that it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I love that. I love that a lot, Bev. It's a great story. I love that you've been around for this long. Something that a good portion of the point of this show is to have accurate information given out to our audience. With that accurate information, we can empower a person to make new decisions that can increase the quality of their life. That's a big part of this. So we talk about the myths and misconceptions, as some people will say we're in the information era where information has never been easily accessible. Doesn't mean it's all good information though. So now, if you go back 100 years, it was hard to even find any information. So it's hard to empower yourself with knowledge and wisdom. Now we have it, but a lot of it is not good. So we talk about the myths and misconceptions because we know if I have inaccurate information in my head, like one coat of paint and I'm good, and now my stuff's ruined, that can cause major problems. So with that information being correctly given to me, accurately given to me, I know now that I can make better decisions. So any myths or misconceptions come to mind about your industry that we can help change for the audience?
When I read that question, I wasn't thinking along that line. And quite honestly, paint is very complex. There's so many different applications, and you have to have the right product for the right application or it doesn't work. For example, lots of people don't know that if they've got an older home and their trim is likely painted in an oil paint, they go and buy today's trim paint and try to paint it, it's just going to peel off. So there's multiple. That's why you have a paint store with an expert in it to guide you on what product to get. So it's not something that I can teach you on this podcast.
Okay, so then let me ask you this then, because I mean, I'm a customer basically. So I mean, I'm really who you're talking to in many ways. Paint, from an outsider's point of view, seems easy. It's just paint. I'm not building an engine. I'm not fusing together a bone. Like there's some things from an outsider's point of view that seem incredibly hard. I'm not even going to try it. Like building my own house. No, I'm not even going to consider that. But paint to me seems like, okay, the level of risk isn't super high. If I paint a wall, it's not like I'm going to ruin my home or my wife's going to divorce me. But any skill that I have certainly learned this to master is very difficult. And there is a mastery to every skill, I believe, even if it looks simple. So why use a painter over doing it myself? Let's ask that question, because like our real estate agents that come on, many people decide to list their own home. They won't ask that question after they've gone through the experience of listing their own home. Now they know why they're going to choose a real estate agent next. But for the person out there that's like, yeah, I need to paint these couple things. I'm going to try it my own, not because I want to paint or I like it. If you want to do that, great, go have fun. But because I don't think I need a painter.
Right. So there's a few things that you get when you get a professional painter in. Like we can go through your house and paint your whole house in like 3 days. Okay. If you're going to do your whole house, it's going to take you months because you got to go to work, then you got to come home and have dinner, and then you got to set up and you get part of a room done, and you got to put it all away. And, so there's that about it. It's the speed in which it can be completed by a professional painter. And you probably, unless you've painted 25 homes, can't cut a straight line. So, so you're not going to see that crisp line
Mhm.
along the ceiling edge, down the sides of the trim. There's going to be spots, and so it's getting that clean, crisp cut lines. People make a mistake of trying to get away with one coat, and so they put too much paint on the roller, and then it ends up that they get this what we call orange peel effect on there, and you'll never get that off. The next time you paint it, it's just going to get thicker and thicker. So if you hire someone who knows what they're doing, you get a better finish for sure in a much faster time.
Yeah. And for me, I was just talking to the previous guest about this. There's really only 4 or 5 things that I focus on in my life. I have interest other places, and they get a little bit of time here and there. And sometimes I just wing it and go do random stuff. But for the most part, it's really like 3, 4, 5 things. I think it's hard to get good at anything. So all of these things require my attention. So now, these last 10 years especially, I could probably learn how to paint. I could cut the grass. I could probably change a window. Like, we're all capable human beings, but all of those things are going to do at least 2 things that I can identify right off the hop. They're going to increase my stress. And I know that if my stress goes up, it affects every avenue of my life. I want to stay calm and enjoy my life. And it's also going to take time. So if I'm more stressed and I'm losing time, that is less profitable if we're just going to talk money, but also quality of life. So it's almost because I've worked with so many business verticals like yourself, I don't ask that question anymore. If I need painting done, I hire a painter. If I need to sell my house, I do that. My windows, my driveway, because now I have time back. It is always worth it for me. It's been very rare where I've said that is so much money that I'd rather do it on my own. I'd rather take my own time. It's almost never the case.
Yeah.
So you're going to get that speed working with you. You're going to have that clean cut. So it will be perfect. I imagine you help with color picking and design to an extent. If I asked
One
you.
of my painters has a background in color consulting, and if she's too busy, my supplier supplies a paint color consultant for me at no charge. So
yeah. So I'm going to get that. My stress level is going to be minimum because I can go to work and you guys can do this, and I'm going to get time. So I say this to people, unless it's like you're going to express your creativity rather than picking up a guitar, you want to learn to paint, go nuts. But there are people out there that think I'm going to save money, and that's the highest priority for me rather than hiring an expert. And that's why I brought up the money thing. If you just go for money, it's almost never true, because if you spent that time working your highest level of profitability in your life, you'd probably make significantly more than the cost of the paint itself. So humans are interesting that way, but I'm glad you clarified that, because I know a lot of people think that you can go into their house and you can see the professional wall compared to the do-it-yourself wall. It's a noticeable difference.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you clarifying that for us, Bev. So we were talking about your travel already. We want to get to know who you are, who Bev is behind the business. So we like to ask guests, what do you do for fun? And you already said that you make your work fun. And many of our entrepreneurs, they're building something that's important to them. So they have a lot of fun at work, which I think is fantastic. Not a lot of people can say that. I think it is rare, but there are things to do outside of work, as work isn't our whole life, that can be very, very fun too. So what does Bev get up to when not running Fresh Look Painting Services?
So I back onto Sandy Hollow, and
I see. Yep.
Yeah, and I walk the dog through there a couple of times a week, a day. I mean, it clears your mind just to being amongst the trees, right? There's nothing more like being in the forest, as far as I'm concerned, to be calming effect, to have a calming effect. My husband and I are involved in some volunteer stuff. And there's also always a social aspect to that. We like having friends over for a meal and a game of cards and maybe a glass of wine. Mm-hmm. But the big thing is travel. So we have driven all across North America in every state except for Iowa for some reason. I don't know why.
Or Iowa.
Including Alaska.
Wow.
And When the kids were young, we used to go to Disney 2 or 3 times a year. So we've been to Disney. I'm not even sure how many times. I can't even tell you. We now, because we traveled so much, our kids I have a son that lives in Australia, so I have to go there every year. And he has a wonderful 2-year-old. If you want some joy in your life, just spend a few hours with a 2-year-old. It's great. I just got back from there, actually. And our other son lives in Texas. He's lived all over the state. So wherever he's living, we go to visit him and his wife. I have a daughter here who has 2 now adolescent children, and we take them on a lot of our trips with us. So they're getting to see that there's somewhere outside of Barrie. Not that Barrie's not a great place. It is, but it's not the whole world.
Yep.
And we have been on 60 cruises. So I think we're almost done with cruising, but maybe
After
not.
60? Yeah.
So that's what we do for fun, is planning a trip is almost as fun as going on it.
So let me ask you, Bev, I mean, there's so much we could just talk about the benefits of traveling for probably hours. I was raised in a family that taught me about exploration and culture and not minimizing my life experience to a town, that there's so much to this rock that's spinning to learn about. But it's not about me. It's about you. Why travel? I mean, why do you do it?
It also, our families didn't travel. Our families didn't leave Canada, didn't leave Ontario, except after they moved up from the eastern provinces. That's all they did was go back to the eastern provinces, and that was it, right?
This is when you were growing up, Bev?
Yeah, that was it. So when we got married, it was in the wintertime, and we were going to go to Niagara Falls. And at the time, it was before the internet, right? And you couldn't look up stuff yourself, so you had to go to a travel agent. And she said, "Why are you going to Niagara Falls in the winter?" We said, "Well, it's the honeymoon capital." And she said, "Well, you can go to the Bahamas for about the same price."
That's an easy answer.
And we went to the Bahamas and experienced winter in the Caribbean, and that was the end of that, right? So we both had really good jobs when we were young. We waited 9 years to have kids, so we got a lot of travel in before that. And as soon as they were old enough to go, they came with us. So I think you learn tolerance of the differences in people and culture. You experience amazing food differences and weather and scenery. Oh my God. If you haven't been to the monuments in, can't think of the state right now, but it'll come to me. It's like the scenery, even in a desert, is beautiful. The sunsets off the coast of Australia, outside of Perth, where my son lives, are unparalleled here. Like, you can't see all of those things from here. So
yeah. Australia was the biggest trip that I went on, longest 2 months. I was 25, and we started at the southern east coast. So Adelaide, which is a little bit west, but Sydney, I think, is right at the bottom there. And we went all up the east coast until we got to Cairns, which was amazing. And then just north of that was Cape Tribulation, which is just a jungle. It looks like God just scooped a hole out of the middle of the jungle, and we planted our little, our little compound there, barracks and all. That was wonderful. But do you think it makes us better humans?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Because people who maybe we are better humans because we like to travel. Because, if you don't tolerate the differences in the culture and the fact that not everybody can speak English and, all of that, you don't travel.
Right.
We actually took a cruise 3 years ago around Australia.
How long? Was it a month?
Yeah, it was a month. Yeah. But it hit all the cities because the population is only on the exterior, right?
Right.
So,
That is a fantastic. I was telling friends and family, like, what is it like? I said, I can't, it's hard in words, but Jurassic Park in modern day gives you an idea. And then the sky. I mean, I was on a beach out in this Cape Tribulation. You got, 6.5-foot birds, the cassowaries, right? You
Yes.
saw
Oh,
those.
they're beautiful.
Beautiful, but scary.
Yes.
Huge hooks on their feet. So they're, like man-killing birds pretty much. We got big pythons, like, we're talking that thick, swirling around or just rolling around us.
Hanging out.
Yeah, I can't think of the word, but slithering, that's the one. Then we're on the beach. Everything's pitch black, but it's so bright because the moon I could almost touch it. It's so big, but no lights. That was the point of this. No electronics, nothing like that. So you got all the wildlife in the jungle just going nuts. You got the big birds. I got, 10 plus feet or 3-4 meter crocodiles on the beach in a gathering. All you could see is their little red eyes because it was so dark. And then, if I swam out enough, there's great whites out there. And I'm trying to give them this experience. And like, weren't you terrified? There was death around you everywhere. And I said, wow, maybe that's why it made it so good. It was so serene. It was so peaceful.
And billions of stars in the sky.
It was incredible.
It's unbelievable how many stars are in the southern hemisphere sky.
And when you have no light pollution, you can actually see it.
Yeah.
It really was one of the.
I haven't been there, but I had the same experience in Shark Bay on the West Coast.
Right.
It's out in the middle of nowhere. And I was there during the blood red moon there about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep.
I was on the beach there, dolphins going along it was great.
Yeah, it's really hard to describe in words, but I love that. I love that you think, human beings can become more connected with others by going to their place, seeing what they do, how they live, that we can become probably more wise, more experienced, but more tolerant. You said that a few times, and I don't know if there's many things more important than being tolerant of our other humans. We're on the same team. If we can play better together, everything is going to go better together. So just another reason to go traveling. I don't think too many people need to be convinced to go travel, but I do think we look at it as more as pleasure, relax, get that drink on the beach. But I think it's a lot more than that. And I think you just identified a big one, tolerance. Appreciate you sharing that with us, Bev. And I love that you guys travel as much as you do. Your travel are my life goals. I got to get to that point.
A lot of people say that to me. They want to be me.
I have 2 weeks this year is the first time in, 7 years. So that was a big deal for me, but hopefully I'll get to that 1 month in a few years. Big goals. I love that you guys do it. Outside of the fun things, Bev, we talk about doing hard things on the show. We talk about our challenges. I have all my rules for life inked on my skin there to remind me when I'm in those moments, try to be very intentional about life. And I think having a healthy reminder near you can help, especially when things get tough. So we like talking about those tough moments because I really believe that humans grow most rapidly through their challenges. COVID helped a lot of us better our lives, or at least identify what we didn't like about our lives. That was a very stressful time. None of us have lived through that. I think a lot of us got better from it. I think we get better by being challenged. There's an old Chinese proverb. It says, everything is hard before it is easy. And I think it's meant to be that way. I think life should be hard to a certain extent. If it was easy, I think we'd get bored. So I believe that growth comes from challenge. And our hardships, our trials and tribulations often suck in the moment. And we don't want to go through them. But when we look back, they become an integral ingredient to who we are. So if you're comfortable with it, any challenges, hardships, trials, tribulations come to mind that probably felt pretty shitty in the moment, but when you look back, they helped you become who you are now, and you don't regret going through it.
So my siblings and I had a very rough childhood, and I remember reading when I was about 13 in the paper. It said that most people that were brought up in that environment, living in the slums, abuse, all of those things, tend to bring that to their adult life and stay in that type of life 80% was the number that I read.
I could
And
believe
I
it.
went, nope, I'm not doing that. So my mom asked me to go to work when I was 16 in order to help pay the rent. And then when I was almost 17, the landlord kicked us out yet again. And I went my own way and got my own place. So I had my own place when I was 17 years old, not even quite 17 when I had my own place. That made me stronger for sure. And it makes me realize that you create your own happiness. It's a decision that you make every day to be happy. And I've lived my life doing that. So no regrets. I think that made me stronger. And I understand what people have been through. I have a hard time understanding that people struggle with happiness. I get that they do, but I was blessed with a positive attitude and I've carried that through. So it's made me what I am today.
I love it. I love these stories so much. Especially, you know, I'm an addictions counselor.
Sure.
On the
So you've
weekend,
heard a lot.
right? So I do that on the weekend because it's so fulfilling. My work is this company. But it was my way to give back to the community. It's been involved in my life, my family's life. Yeah, I came up in the sports world, so a lot of injuries turned into painkillers. But you nailed a couple things there that were just so important to me. Is you said happiness essentially is a choice. It's not something that happens to you. It's something that you choose to take part of, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you get to wake up every day, no matter how shitty it seems to be, or no matter how great it seems to be, your happiness is your own choice, which for anybody listening that thinks when I get that thing, I'll be happy, or when that happens, or when this changes, I'll be happy. You're saying they can change that this moment. They can choose to be happy now with whatever they're going through. And I would argue that if you can figure out how to be happy in the shitty times, then you will forever be happy when things go well as well.
Most people should do a gratitude journal.
I think it's a beautiful thing. I really
Every day, write down something that you're grateful for. If it's just the fact that there was enough toothpaste in your toothbrush this morning, like start with anything. But like I feel now that I have so much to be grateful for. I'm welcoming my son's home for 6 weeks in Australia. You know, like that's not everybody feels that, right?
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think human beings, we struggle to appreciate what we have. I'll say rather than human beings. I know I have myself, I've had to put a lot of work in to enjoy my life the way I do now. And I think that's fine. What you work for, typically you appreciate more. But I think, at least from my point of view and some friends and family, we struggle to identify all that we have right now. We're constantly thinking about wanting more, or in many cases, comparing ourselves to others, noticing that we don't have what they have. And then you're constantly in these thoughts of, I'm thinking in the future or I'm thinking in the past, and never struggling to be present. And I think when you can be present and really soak up the moment, I think it stacks the deck in our favor for recognizing more of what we have. Or just travel, like you said, go to a place, the third world country, you'll realize very, very quickly how much abundance we live in. And sometimes that's just the light switch that you need. But not many people have said that coming on here, that happiness is a choice. And you even said you've been blessed with this positive attitude. I would argue that positive attitude is a skill that you've cultivated over decades. You think you were just born with it and you've just always been positive?
I think there's an aspect to that. I think that, you know, there's a combination of of genes and experience that molds a person. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was difficult,
Right.
but it didn't ruin my life.
That's an interesting point. You put 3-4 people in the exact same environment, especially at a young age, and it impacts them differently. So maybe you are right. Maybe there's some inborn traits that we have. But I like that you said genes and experience, because our experience has such a massive impact on our life and how we view it, our perspective, what we take from it. But I'm glad that that's all went back to happiness and gratitude. And that's what that's turned in from you when, based on your story, you had every reason to be miserable. And many people, like you said, 80% or whatever the statistic is, are.
And vengeful and all kinds of things. Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that. That was took some great tips for myself on that. Happiness is a choice. That's very good. Back to business. Bev, what's one thing you wish the audience knew about Fresh Look Painting Services in particular?
Clients love having us in their home.
You guys are fun, eh?
And we do a great job.
Yeah.
So I was reminded of that because this morning I was out in Alliston setting up a job at a house that we've worked in before. Mm-hmm. We worked there on something that Stacy was doing, and now they've had us like 3 years ago, and now they've had us back to do the rest of the house. And on the weekend, I got a call from someone that I actually painted 10 years ago. So that's a real testament to the whole client experience, that they would remember me 10 years later and call me up and say, can you do this? So we answer the phone. We say what we're going to do. We do that. We turn up when we say we will. We don't come and go like some contractors who come and go from project. You don't know when they're going to show up again.
Right.
I hate adding on extras. I only do it when they are going to put me way over budget. I just love doing that work. I love meeting people, getting to know them as clients, and it shows in the work that we do and the repeat customers that we have. Yeah,
that really is a testament. If we use this as a kind of a litmus test on our team, whether it's free services, paid service, doesn't really matter. If a client or someone that we've done work for leaves the experience and is willing to come back as a repeat experience, that's a big win. Mm-hmm. If we can get that client to want to enjoy coming back, but also talk about us to other people, you've gone above and beyond. Mm-hmm. Most businesses, shouldn't say most, not all businesses are there. That the client experience, at the end of the day, they may not remember the price, they may not remember exactly what was said, but we remember the feeling of the experience. Were they negative? Were they off-putting? Did I really connect? Did they care for me? To the point where I'm willing to say to somebody else, yeah, they were great. It was 6 years ago. I can't tell you if they were competitive price-wise, but they did exactly what I wanted, but they were just great to me. That's going way above and beyond of providing a product and a service. You are providing an experience and increasing the quality of that person's life, which I think goes way beyond money. So I love that was your one thing that you wish the audience would know. I'm sure many of the listeners probably already do know you. Now, my secret question, because we've already gone deep, I like going into the depths when it comes to humans. Yeah. I find human beings fascinating. I think we're an incredible species. I think our potential is incredible. So I talk about a handful of things: mentorship, impact, purpose, a couple of things that I talk about. I like to study. And this is kind of 2 in 1. I had great mentors at a young age. I was very lucky because I just bumped into them. And now my life has been changed through mentors. I keep them close and I try to mentor others. But in my early 20s, I had a great mentor, and she, for whatever reason, dug her claws in and said, I'm going to help change this kid's life. I imagine that's what she said in her head. She put a lot of effort into me, and I didn't put a lot of effort in back at the beginning. But I was on a path in my early 20s that probably weren't conducive to living a life well lived for the decades to come. It was, I was winging it, and pleasure is basically what I was going for. So she encouraged me to think about my impact. How has your life been up to this moment? Are you proud of it? Do you regret it? Et cetera, et cetera. What is your intention regarding impact for each day? She was the first one to teach me that you're young, you're 23, but there's no guarantee you'll be here tomorrow. Just because life expectancy is 79 for men in Canada, or whatever it is, doesn't mean you're going to go anywhere near there. A car, anything could happen. A pandemic, she didn't bring that up, but that could have happened. So time is out of my hands. I get to only control what I do with it, not how much I get. So she taught me, what do you want today to be? Because tomorrow may not come. And then however long you're here, what do you want your impact to be like? You were born, you will die. What will your impact be on this world? So for some, that's a very big question. For others, they think about it every day. So I like to ask our guests, what would you like your impact to be, whether it's on your company, your family, the whole world? I would argue they're all one and the same. But we like to ask our guests, what do you want your impact to be, Bev?
It's my family. I'm really close to all my kids. I don't know your situation, but there's nothing like a relationship between a son and a mom, And my son in Australia was going through some horrific times in the last few years and called me every day. And for him to reach out to me like that makes me feel very valued.
Oh, yeah.
And I really cherish that. My daughter, who lives here in Barrie, I don't know what she'd do without me, and I'm sure she feels the same way. And my son in Texas is much more independent, but whenever he's going through a tough time, he picks up the phone and calls me, and that is very valuable to me. I have a cherished 98-year-old mother-in-law who I can't say enough about. And that's what it is my family and my grandkids. Had a big impact on their lives, and I will continue to.
I love it. I appreciate you sharing that with us, Bev. I think about, purpose and the meaning of life. Often, I think we get to choose it. I don't know that there is one, but what often comes back in my head is, simplify it. Don't overcomplicate it. Be a good human. Leave this world better than you found it. And sometimes, you want to be Elon Musk and help the world by going to Mars or turning all combustion engines into electric. Fine. Think that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're just helpful to other people, that's selflessness. Being a great mother, I think, is one of the best ways a human being can impact the world. Being a great father or a great friend, great son. One of the most beautiful relationships in my life are with my parents. My father, he's my main mentor for sure. And my mother taught me about connection, about what it is to love another human being, to be open, to be strong. She taught me vulnerability was strength, something that a man certainly struggles with, but probably both genders. But I think if you have a great family, you're doing a lot of good to this world. I mean, it ripples out. But I agree with you that son and mother relationship is, it's a beautiful thing, and not everybody has it. So I'm very thankful that you do. But Bev, it was a pleasure speaking to you. I'm sure we could go on and on and on.
I'm sure we could.
Yeah. I love, you said you were an open book before we started, and you certainly were. And it's really a pleasure getting to know somebody that way. But 15 years in the business, team of 4, fun, productivity, customers enjoy it. They're repeating. You've won multiple awards, and you're certainly having an impact on your clients, your staff, your family, and now on me. So I really appreciate you coming on, Bev. How can you tell us quickly the best way to get a hold of you?
On my website, Fresh Look Painting Services, Barrie. There's a guy that named his place Fresh Look Painting in Kitchener and one in Belleville. So just put Barrie in there and you'll get to me. And it's recently updated. So there's some tools on there where you can get your own, you can figure out what your project will cost. And you can book an appointment with me right online there, or just ask me to come over and we can chat.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Bev. It really was a pleasure having you on the show. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com or call 705-413-3775.